Good morning. This is Mona, and this is my morning view. Today, spring edition 2026. It is beautiful. Long weekend, rain, cold. It was a bust. But today, beautiful. All right. For those of you looking for yesterday's Memory Monday, there was none. I take holidays off. I take vacation off. I take weekends off. And anytime I have a video during that time, it's just a bonus. Okay, so today, Tips Tuesday. Tips Tuesday, and it is, Tips Tuesday. Let's see. I already titled it because I know what I'm going to talk about. I just don't have my words yet. Oh, what is that? Yikes. All right. Stay away from that. Sidetracks. Okay, so, how do I start this? When I was younger, there were certain things I just didn't know. I just don't know things. And later on, when I was older and that time had passed, then I found out about things that I could have done that I didn't know about back in the day, right? So, in my heart of hearts, as a young person, I was like, man, I would love to go live in Israel. I'd love to go live in Israel. I've been a component for Israel. And I was like, if I could have served in the military in Israel, that would have been just amazing, right? And then, who knows, maybe I could have become a dual citizen of Israel and the U.S. Yeah, I don't know how all that works. Well, as I got older, it was like learning things about Israel and about citizenships, and my daughter was born in Germany, so she had the option of being a dual citizen with Germany. Some family members wanting to get a citizenship with Italy, and what it would take to get that done, right? And some of the rules have changed recently, so it makes it a little bit more difficult and different things like that. However, there's all these different things about dual citizenship. Now, I'm not a dual citizen of Israel, nor do I really care to be at this point. But at the time when I was younger, I was like, oh, that would be so cool, I'm not Jewish, but I am a Christian. And there's a lot of things I've learned about the land of Israel that sometimes I'm like, really, Christians? That's what you do there? Because that's not being a very good example of Christ in that space. Really not. It's my own, how I perceive it. Idolatry being a big one. The worship of places is why Jesus, it's why God told Peter and Andrew and those that were up on the mountain of Transfiguration, when they wanted to build something to commemorate this, what had happened there, and he said, just do what he tells you to do. So many places are enshrined, and it's okay to visit those places. I would love to go visit those places, look at the archaeology, look at the architecture, look at the, all the different things, but worship is not, no, we don't worship those places, we don't worship those things, but it sure appears that way. Totally off subject. However, when I look at, I'm trying to find a place where I'm not being blinded here, and that's not working out. And I could go down into the grass, tall, wet grass, except for I would get my shoes all wet, and I may lose the internet. I lose the internet when I'm standing right next to the door. So there is that. All right, let's see. All right, so I got a halo here, but at least I'm not being blinded. All right, so dual citizenship is really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how you can have dual citizenship. Or you can live in a place because that's where you're assigned. Like when we were in the military, we were assigned to live in certain places. And that didn't make us citizens of those places. You know, if you were in the military and you were in another state, your base where you were stationed was at another state, you still held on to your driver's license from where you're from. You still, I mean, unless you wanted to get it changed, but it wasn't mandatory to change it. As a military person, you did not have to change your driver's license from one state to another, because you're basically a visitor there for whatever termed time that you're there. And so you are, yeah, you're a citizen of the United States, but you're not necessarily a citizen of North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas. Those are some of the places we were stationed here in the United States. And so, you know, your car could still have the plates of the state that you were in. You know, the USS New Jersey. That was the big boat that was driven by my husband. That's one of them. And then, what I mean by a big boat is, I mean a very large car. That particular one was the Fury. So anyways, you don't have to change. Now, you do have to obey the laws of that land. So, like, if you are able to turn right on red in your state, and the state you're in does not have a right on red, guess what you have to follow? You have to follow the state rules. So that's, you know, even though you're not a citizen of that space, you still have to follow the rules, even if you're there visiting for the day. All right, now, moving right along, that should be a lesson for those people that go over to foreign countries and expect them to have the freedoms that they have here in the foreign lands. No, you have to obey the law of the land. Okay, so then you have, when we were in the military and we were overseas, there were several different times that my husband was overseas more than I was. So while he was there, he was not a citizen of the land. He was residing there for a mission, for, you know, to serve at a base there, or to serve as in an exercise there. If they're doing dual training between the local country and the U.S. and things like that. So you have this space where you're not a citizen, but you're there, and you still have to obey the laws of the land. Now, as a citizen, you get certain privileges that you don't get if you are not a citizen, unlike the U.S. right now. But that's a whole nother political story, which we don't get into here. Not unless it's going to portray a biblical concept that I happen to be talking about. And there is a biblical concept to that. But today is not the day. That would be a feisty Friday moment, the day that I get to offend. So here we are. Here we are. We are, if we are a citizen in that country, we have certain privileges, certain, in the U.S., inevitably rights. I can't say it. Inevitable rights. So anyways, in other countries, they have certain protections with them as well. So if you do something in a foreign country, you may not get the same rights as a citizen would have, right? And so here we are. There's dual citizenship. There's citizenship. There's dual citizenship. And then there's not being a citizen at all. You know, ambassadors. Ambassadors live in whatever country they're sent to, but they're not citizens of that country. They're citizens of the United States representing the United States. And hopefully they're representing it well. So, I'm getting somewhere. As Christians, we have a citizenship to the kingdom of God. We are here as ambassadors to the earth. We're here as ambassadors to the earth as citizens of the kingdom. Right? Not dual citizenship. Now, we as Americans have citizenship to our country, right? And again, broken down to the state, you know, the citizen of the state, citizen of the town. There are certain privileges. If you belong to a certain town, there are certain privileges that you have. You know, you can come and visit the park that's only for the town people or maybe the county people. You know, so it can still be broken down, right? The clubhouse, our lake clubhouse. You pay dues, right? And those dues give you privileges, still with rules, still with laws to abide by. But you can have, you know, a type of citizenship to that. Privileges. Members. Okay, so here we are. We're in the world, but not of the world. Ambassadors for Christ. Citizens of the kingdom. So there's this dual loyalty involved with dual citizenship. But we are not citizens of this world. Okay? And when it comes down to it, and the Bible says to obey the laws of the land, unless it goes against God. If it goes against God, then you need to choose this day whom you will serve, which is a little bit, that's Old Testament. Old Testament. But really, it's choose this day whom you will serve. Because when you have dual citizenship, what happens when those two places go to war against each other? You know, what happened to, there was, my husband's family on his mom's side is from Germany. They were German citizens. Now they got out and came over here. His grandmother got out of Germany on the last boat, I believe, leaving out of Italy, because there were no more boats leaving out of Germany before the war. But there were people living in the United States that were German. And when their country went to war, before the U.S. got into it, they encouraged their sons to go fight for their homeland. Right? Encouraged them to fight for their homeland. They had family there. It was important to them. So they went over. And then what happened? The U.S. went into the war. And it went into the war against Germany. Not on the same side of Germany. Now, mind you, that had more to do with political stuff than it did about the Holocaust and the stuff that was, inhumane that was taking place, or that they were, invading all the other countries around them and all of that. It had to do with international water type stuff. It had to do with merchants. It had to do with money, believe it or not. Money was the determining factor that got the United States into the war, and for the Allies and not the Axis. Where did that leave those boys whose parents were still living in the United States, but were encouraged to go fight for their homeland, and now they had to fight against Americans as American citizens? They were born in the United States. Some of them. Many of them. They were looked more harshly on than your average German prisoner. Because they looked at it as treason. This wasn't just a soldier fighting for their homeland. Now this was an American fighting against Americans. Treason. Moving right along. Dual citizenship. At some point, you may have to choose one over the other if they come into disagreement. If they come into disagreement and war against each other. You have to decide who you are going to be more loyal to. Who are you going to be more loyal to? Now, in the case of the kingdom and the world, you are not a citizen of the world. You have no obligation to the world system. But as a citizen of whatever country you live in, as we are ambassadors to Christ and we have to obey the laws of the land, at what point do we see the line between the warring of the kingdom and the warring of our nation, where we are dual citizens? Where we're dual citizens, right? Obey the laws of the land, unless it goes against God's law. There are certain laws that border and cross morality laws. If for some reason, like in Michigan, they have places where they want to put in Sharia law, and as Christians, do we bow down to another religion's Jesus? Now the curse of the law, laws do not save us. It's why Moses couldn't enter into the promised land. because he was a representation of the law. It took Joshua, which in Hebrew is Yeshua. Yeshua is the same name as Yeshua, Jesus. Remember, Jesus is more of a Greek name, written in Greek, but it's not his Jewish name. And by the way, it doesn't matter whether you say Jesus or Yeshua or any of the other names that are called Jesus, whatever language you're in. When we're talking about the name of Jesus, we're talking about the essence that it carries. We're talking about what a name represents, what that name is, and not the pronunciation of it. That's a bonus. Bonus for Tips Tuesday. All right, so when you are in this space where you're in a compromised situation because you have dual citizenship and the two become at war with each other, it's whose loyalty do you stand behind, because you're going to choose one over the other. When it comes down to it, you will choose one over the other, because you really can only serve one master. You can't serve two masters. You know, they used to have double agents. You can't serve two masters. And you can serve God, or you can serve Mammon. Now, Mammon, a lot of times, is reserved for monetary purposes. But when you look at Mammon, Mammon is also the system of this world. How does this world function? Through finances. It functions through finances. We joined the war, World War II, over finances when it comes down to it, not because of morality. But where does God stand on where he decides right for wrong? Isn't through finances, it's through morality. Sometimes the finances lead to a better morality, and sometimes it doesn't, because money in itself is neutral. It's not good or evil. It depends on whose hands it in. It amplifies whose hands it is in. When you have power, authority, it amplifies what kind of a power and what kind of authority you will use, whether it is to the good or whether it is to the bad. When you are a citizen, a dual citizen, you will decide what side you are more loyal to. You'll decide who you are more loyal to. And that could determine between life and death. And so how do you make those decisions of whether it's something you should be loyal to this side or be loyal to that side? How do you choose that? And I would hope you would side on morality. I would hope that you would side on what God is telling you to do. Because if you choose wrong, it's between life and death. I think that's all I got for you today. Whether you're a dual citizen dealing with your country of origin, your state of origin, your town of origin, your county, whatever it is, to being a citizen of the kingdom, God's kingdom, dual citizenship, or whether you're just being an ambassador of the kingdom and you're here as an ambassador without dual citizenship, because we're not citizens of the world, the world system, or whether we're just here on assignment, but we still have to obey the laws of the land, unless it's against God's law. All right, that's where I'm leaving you. Make sure you go over to YouTube, Mona E. Harrison. White hair, beautiful face. You'll know you're in the right spot. And subscribe. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Get all the bells and whistles. Hit the notifications. Eventually one day I'll do lives on YouTube. Right now they're just uploads. This one uploaded there. And so if you go over there, even if you've watched this one, if you go over there, you'll see a whole year's worth of content. You won't find that on Facebook. Facebook started taking them down after a month. And so it no longer exists. So I've lost a lot of content there. I do still have, for the most part, 10 years worth of content that I have not uploaded into YouTube yet. However, YouTube doesn't take it down yet. It's all good for now. So go over there, watch the stuff on fast speed, which you can't do here on Facebook unless you're watching it on your computer with a speed controller. And I found out my husband's Apple has a speed controller. Ooh, already in it. So you don't have to download one. But if you have an HP like me, then, well, you'll need to download a speed controller for your computer. But they don't have that on Facebook, on my phone. They might have it on Apple phones, but they don't have it on Android. So go over to YouTube. Guess what's on YouTube? Fast speed. It's built right into the longer versions because they know that people don't have a whole lot of time. And so sometimes when the content gets a little long, you can watch it on fast speed while you're doing the dishes, while you're doing laundry, while you're resting. And when you're doing that, you're accomplishing two things at once without messing up your brain. Because I am not a multitasker, and I don't encourage other people to multitask unless they're doing something like that. You don't even have to watch it. You can listen to it. All right. So, with that, go over to YouTube. Both here on Facebook and YouTube. Like, share, comment, because it helps the algorithm. And if this content is valuable to you, it might be valuable to a friend. So go ahead and share it. All right. Blessings, everybody. Have a great day. And I will see you tomorrow for Wonderful Wednesday. Woo! The week is almost over. Look at that. Bye. Blessings.